Alright everyone, hello and welcome in. The opening clip you just saw there was the coolest part of today's joint practice between the Minnesota Vikings and the Denver Broncos. That was Von Miller at the end of practice leading the crowd in the Skull chant. Just that's the coolest thing I've seen in sports all year. I am super pumped for the season now, having seen that. Von Miller's just a cool dude, and I'm going to try to record this with a storm going on in the background, so if you hear some thunder and lightning, or if my lights go out during this recording, of course I may just hit stop, but I don't know, we'll see what happens. So today was the first joint practice between the Minnesota Vikings and the Denver Broncos. They've got a few more coming up this week before the first preseason game that they'll be having with the Denver Broncos on Saturday. So there will be a lot to talk about between now and then. The Vikings have released their first unofficial depth chart. We'll get more into that before the preseason game actually is held. But for today, I just want to do takeaways and storylines from the first joint practice, the first time that the Vikings get to play against somebody other than themselves, and sort of talk about how it went. So I have four key points that I want to tackle here today. We're going to start with the special teams because, you know, we've talked a little bit about special teams over the course of the past few months, but it's kind of been one of those things that has flown under the radar, and I've brought it up on several occasions because it is still the one thing that I am really unsure about. We have a new kicker, well, you know, depending on who that new kicker is going to be, new special teams head coach, and we had a return game last year that was just absolutely abysmal. So those are areas of concern that absolutely need to be addressed, and they need to be better for the Vikings to at least improve upon their win-loss total by at least, I would say, at least one game, maybe two. We'll see how it goes. So to start off with the special teams, the good news is that Greg Joseph made 5 out of his 5 field goal attempts, and he hit a long from 53. Now, is he going to be expected to hit longer field goals than 53? Absolutely. You know, don't be surprised if he marches out there for some 54s and 55s, 56, maybe 57. I don't know what his career long is. I haven't spent a lot of time this offseason diving into the history of one Greg Joseph. So we are all learning at the same pace right now for this special teams unit when it comes to the kickers. I don't know if Riley Patterson was out there today. I didn't see any reports about him. I believe that the initial report is that Greg Joseph is going to do all of the kicking for the first preseason game. So at least for the first practice, I don't want to get out over my skis here, or out over the tips of our skis, but at least he looks good so far in the first practice. The bad news when it comes to the special teams is once again that the return game doesn't look great. And the Vikings really need D.D. Westbrook to get healthy because we had 2 muff punts today that were reported. One for Chad Beebe, no surprise, and one for Amir Abdullah, which does surprise me because he's supposed to be the stable veteran. And I think that the only reason that he makes this roster is because he is a veteran. And, you know, we have somebody explosive like Kenny Nwangu, but he's a rookie. And, you know, Mike Zimmer and his history with rookies kind of speaks for itself. So you would expect Amir Abdullah to be, you know, sort of that veteran presence for a special teams unit that didn't excel last year. But so far, out of the gate doesn't look great. So the return game absolutely needs to improve. For the first joint practice, we're basically where we've been at, you know, since the offseason. So hopefully that gets better. Number 2, we're going to go on to another sour topic. That's going to be injuries, because there was a couple of injuries that are of significance that occurred in this joint practice. So the first one being Alexander Mattison having to be walked off the field with a hamstring, apparent hamstring injury. No confirmation on that yet as of this recording. That is something very serious to consider because remember, we behind Dalvin Cook, who he himself, we're always holding our breath when he goes down in a pile. All we have right now behind him is Kenny Nwangu, the rookie, and Amir Abdullah. I don't think we want Amir Abdullah being the starting running back at any point this season in case something happens to Dalvin Cook or if he just needs a week off or whatever the case may be. The other injury that's more significant, probably in terms of being lost for the season potentially, is Blake Prohl, who went down in a heap with an apparent serious knee injury. He had to be carted off the field. His status is also unknown as of this recording. We probably won't learn more about these 2 injuries until tomorrow. So it's just wait and see at this point. So we're getting a little banged up early on in preseason here in training camp, especially at the wide receiver group, which we're going to talk more about when we do the position preview. We've already lost B.C. Johnson for the year to the ACL tear. Justin Jefferson is currently on the shelf with the AC joint sprain. Adam Thielen has been banged up. He has a history of injury problems himself. And then, you know, to go and potentially lose Blake Prohl you know, the signing of Warren Jackson is suddenly so much more important than it was a few days ago. So hopefully that's it. Hopefully we've had our share of training camp injuries and we don't see no more, because I don't think we can really deal with that right now. All right, moving on to the Vikings offense. We'll talk about them real quick. The running game looked sharp. Alexander Mattison had a nice run. Dalvin Cook had a nice run that I saw in some of the clips that I was watching on Twitter today. But it's the same old song and dance for the offense, right? The running game looks good. And then also today in practice against the Broncos, pass protection looked not great. Rashad Hill had a really bad rep that would have ended up in a sack. Kirk Cousins had very little time in the pocket to, you know, make reads and throw passes. Really, all of the quarterbacks today did not look great. It was a very defensive, favorable towards the defense, if I could say it that way, entire day as far as the practice goes. And, you know, that's kind of not a surprise, because you have the Denver Broncos coached by Vic Fangio, a defensive guru, and then you have Mike Zimmer, head coach of the Vikings, a defensive guru. So no surprise that the offense has struggled today, but really it doesn't inspire any confidence in myself with the potential that this offensive line is going to be featuring Rashad Hill starting at left tackle week 1 against the Cincinnati Bengals. The good news, though, is that I've heard reports that Ezra Cleveland has been looking good. And, you know, Oli Udoh is, of course, stepping up and probably taking over that right guard position. He was first on the depth chart so far this week. So offensive line struggles in pass protection once again. That's no surprise. Situational offense looks shaky at times today, according to reports. Just an overall struggle day, as we said, for the offense in general. Hopefully that, you know, they're able to figure that out. Remember, that's why we practice. That's why we have training camp. That's why we have joint practices, to figure these things out. Don't panic just yet, but these are some things to be aware of. Next, we switch over to the defense. The defense did have a good day, but the secondary itself kind of struggled. Rashad Breeland missed an interception. Jerry Jeudy was getting open, making some nice catches. Xavier Woods did have an interception today off of a tip drill. I think it hit Mackenzie Alexander in the hands. It hit one other person in the hands, and then Xavier Woods finally came down with it. But overall, Drew Luck and Teddy Bridgewater were able to move the football through the air against the Minnesota Vikings secondary when they did have time to throw the pass. And I do want to mention when they did have time, because I want to say that today, the highlight of the day for the Minnesota Vikings has to be the defensive line, because this defensive line showcased today, and remember, it's the first practice, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but this performance today by the defensive line inspires confidence. This is what I'm looking for in terms of improvement, because Michael Pierce, Dalvin Tomlinson, and even Armon Watts, who has been making a name for himself in this training camp, he is third on the depth chart on the defensive line as the backup nose tackle. He has looked phenomenal. He has just absolutely looked phenomenal. Armon Watts and Michael Pierce especially, big shout outs to them. These are massive human beings in the middle of the field. I think Mike Zimmer has to be very excited about the interior of his defensive line and how it is looking so far, because that was probably the biggest area of pain for them last year. And what crippled the rest of the defense is that the interior was subpar, the pass rush was subpar, and then the rest of it just fell apart as the season wore on. So shout out to Watts, Tomlinson, and Pierce. They've looked really sharp, and once again, they looked really sharp today. And I do want to mention that they did it without Danielle Hunter. He did not participate in this evening. So big shout out to the defensive line. So those are my takeaways / storylines, key points from today's joint practice with the Denver Broncos. Let me know what you think about today, and let me know what you think about this going forward as we get into the first preseason game. We got more to talk about tomorrow. I will see you in the next one. Thanks for watching.